And I can remember Becky asked me very nicely if I would stand under a tent when there was an event inside Cuthbert Collins Park and just sort of let the people know that we had this 4-page discussion paper that just threw all these ideas on the table. Unknown to me, there's a few people that weren't happy with some of those items that were being discussed, and they came after me like I had supported BMX biking in the park. And I got hammered all one sunny Sunday afternoon when I was attending the River Song event. It was quite an eye-opener to me, and I realized that this process was going to take a little while, and it did. There's lots and lots of passionate conversations, but we're all working towards a common goal and trying to find a way to manage this facility. I think we're pretty pleased with the process that was undertaken, and even though it took an awful long time, I think that was probably a good idea in many ways because it calmed people's nerves. And it gave everybody a chance to continue to voice their concerns, continue to get their oar in the water and be involved. It was good. This latest version, I had not heard any concerns from any particular group, and Julian Anderson lives at the bottom of my street. I'm sure he would say something to me somewhere along the line. Certainly Laura would. And Dorothy, you know, Dorothy Chambers, we all know. I don't know if she's here tonight, but she hasn't said anything to me about this management plan. So that's good news from our point of view. The management of this property is extremely complex because of the different ownerships. And we are, as a community association, been quite concerned since the BCC has disappeared. Who owns this land now? And is the lease worth the paper it's written on? To be sure of that, I think part of the management plan should be acquiring that lease in terms of land title. So Santa should have title to that property. There's no doubt in my mind, and as much as possible, we should have title to the property that's near the highway as a buffer to the park at the very least. You know, we're right to be concerned about what's going to happen at the Mackenzie intersection, and certainly our community will be heavily involved in that from many different directions, and certainly especially from those that are concerned with the environment of the park. So be ready for that one. It'll be quite loud. Now, the suggestion of the balanced passive uses of this park are good ones. I mean, when you walk through there, that's what it's good for. It's not good to go in there with your archery set and try and practice shooting arrows at trees. It's not good for you to go in there to expect to give your dog a run in the water, because that's not a good thing for the environment. It destroys the habitat. But it is a great place to go walk your dog, and the dogs love it. My dogs just have a great time walking up and down those trails. And they stay on the main trails. They don't go off in the woods because we don't give them that opportunity. And that's the education piece that needs to happen. We talked about the fact that some dog owners are not aware of what kind of damages they might be causing when they let the dogs run free. And I saw a pit bull the other day that was running around the woods having a great time. Happiest dog you ever saw. But the owner had no idea what was happening to an area that we carefully replanted with native species and spent hours and hours dragging out invasive species. And but meanwhile, the owner just let this dog run wild through the space. And you know, I didn't really say anything because it was not an opportunity, and probably wasn't the right time and place. But the education work that needs to be done is paramount, and it should happen sooner rather than later. I have to say the work done by Becky and all the Saanich Park staff was tremendous, and they are to be congratulated. We had a great time working with them. We'll continue to work with them in the future. We have established very clear lines of respect, and we look forward to other opportunities to work on projects like this. Specifically, we'd love to see the ownership of this park become Saanich's. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's Mark Adams, 3925 Ansel Road. Just very briefly about the interchange and Mackenzie Admirals at TransCanada. It seems going north from there, it's about 3 kilometers to Victoria General, which is one of our 2 major hospitals, as everyone is well aware. There seems to be an awful lot of traffic that wants to go in it. Surprisingly, it's only 2 lanes, although it would seem there is plenty of room for a 3rd lane. It would require a small bit of blasting, but otherwise it's vacant land, it appears. I've noticed, I think the budget was $85 million tossed around for that interchange. It would seem that possibly, I didn't hear anything about expanding the width of the Trans-Canada and that between Admirals and Trans-Canada and say up to Helmkin Road, Buckus Way, where Victoria General is. So I just wondered if it's come on Saanich Council's radar, and of course it would impact the park.
Good evening. My name is Peter Hurden, 3515 James Heights. I'd like to also congratulate the Parks Department for an excellent job. This is a first-rate plan. I've taken a close look at it myself. I'd like to make some comments about the applicability of this type of approach for our other parks. So that's the vein in which I have the following comments. This plan creates a structure for the community to actually get behind a plan like this and to be able to contribute to the removal of invasive species. I'm, of course, live close to a similar park, the City Hill Park, and we look for opportunity to actually combine our efforts with the efforts of the golf course crew, and furthermore with Parks and Rec to that end, to actually try and improve the park, remove invasive species. So that's what this plan does. It actually is a blueprint for the involvement of the community. I think that one thing that is not really stated very clearly as being a community concern, but I think bears mention, that many people in the community are worried about the future of their parks and indeed the prospects for loss of their parks. Recently we've seen discussion around the sewer plants possibly going to park space, and for that matter homeless people using park space. A lot of community concern about that type of development. In Canmore, in Alberta, there's a prospect they're going to lose a chunk of their downtown park to development, low-cost housing in this instance. So when I talk to people in City Hall Park, that's something we hear a lot, that we worry about the prospect that if the golf course fails, then what about our park? What's the future of our park? And so this plan actually for this community provides some assurance that there is a future view that the park will exist as a natural space. And I think that's tremendously important for the community overall. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say, but once again, thank you and congratulations to Parks and Rec.
Anyone else who'd like to address council on this item, please come forward. All right, seeing none. I saw a few hands earlier. I saw Councillor Dermott first, and Bryson, and Mayor Atwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to very much congratulate members of our park staff on the superb work done, but also all of the stakeholders in the community and elsewhere who contributed to the process. I think it's brought a spectacular plan for the future of this park, and I hope that this council and future councils will make sure that the opportunity to implement that plan is there and takes place. I found in the whole plan, the master plan that we got, the most graphic representation, I think, was on page 28, which is the page that has all the informal trails. And I agree with entirely that those have to be managed. That's the type of activity that did much to destroy Mystic Vale. and other things of that nature, and indeed is problematic in Mount Doug in places. I really support those trails being closed, and I've heard some encouraging language about more interpretive signage in the park. I would hope that part of that interpretive signage would graphically and fully explain to people why it's important to stay on the trails and what kind of damage occurs. Because a lot of people, I think, just do it completely unknowing. Well, if we just put Junior in there 10, 15 meters, what a fabulous picture we would get. You know, and all these kinds of things. And there's no ill intent, but the result in the end is just destructive. And wanted to make one more comment, and that is, I've had a number of complaints from citizens recently about paddlers coming up the Colquitt Gorge and Portage Inlet, and using that stretch beyond the bridge where it's a pretty important waterfall area, almost to maximize their speed, like they were in a race or training or something of that nature. And it would appear that some of those paddlers are coming from organized groups. So I'm hoping that, and I'm sure they will, but that our park staff will be interfacing with those groups and letting them know that, no, that's not the place for that kind of activity. But I really do think this is an excellent plan. I grew up living about 1 kilometer from this, what is now this park. It wasn't a park then, but we called it the Colquitt Bush. And I'm afraid in my youth I probably contributed to some of those trails, but certainly older and wiser now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dermott. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move that we endorse the Cuthbert Home Park Management Plan.
Second.
I'd like to echo the other comments, thanking staff. I had a chance to review this at the Parks, Trails and Recreation Committee, and a number of times been on our agenda. And I think the care and attention to the detail and the real adherence to listening and working with the community has been evident throughout any of the process that I've observed. I also acknowledge the tremendous input from the community, and I'm hoping that after this, because the Parks Department has such a good relationship with all of the many stakeholders, there will be a formal acknowledgement to all of them that this council is very grateful for the work that has gone into this. When we look at the picture that Gary showed us of 50 years ago, it's for Saanich to be able to say that for the time of this, since that not only have we been good stewards, but with this plan, that's projected into the future. You know, people will, 50 years from now, look at what we have set in motion with this plan, and I think it's a real testament to how important Saanich regards its parks and the amazing people we have working for us to assist us so that this legacy, this amazing natural space, as we densify our city more, a place like this isn't going to be just a nice place to go. It's going to be an absolute requirement to ensure not only the physical but the mental health of the future Saanich citizens, and I think it'll be continue to be just an amazing asset to Saanich. So glad that we're here to support this plan.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Mayor Atwell.
Thank you. I had a question to staff through you. The topic of the Mackenzie interchange was brought up a number of times. If we look to the interchange that was put at Bay and Mackenzie, things can be quite invasive and have quite on the community. When I look at the map of the park, it's my understanding that there is a section of the road border that belongs to the transportation infrastructure. My question is, are we expecting any part of the park, as it stands now, to be impacted by construction of this or whatever plans? We haven't seen any plans yet, nothing concrete or even preliminary from the ministry. In your opinion,
Yes,
expect any
Mr. Mayor,
impact on the
I would anticipate that there will be impacts in the park, yes. We don't know to what extent those impacts will creep into the park itself, but I think as part of the design of that interchange, I think the ministry ought to be aware that that there should be some compensation as far as restoration work in the park and other work that would be needed to mitigate some of the environmental impacts. Stormwater drainage, for example, coming off the interchange, that'll have to be properly managed. I'm sure they'll be looking at the park as a site to do that. That's a disadvantage, but it can also be an advantage as well. There could be a real opportunity there in terms of doing some real innovative stormwater management, either within the highway right-of-way itself or potentially also in the park as well. And there could be some real good habitat created in there. Certainly some pretty significant, I think, opportunities for restoration planting as well, increasing the biodiversity along the edge of the interchange, probably adding some additional tree planting as kind of a buffer and a barrier to help shield the park from the interchange. But yeah, it's a difficult question to answer because we just don't know. Other than I think we're anticipating a cloverleaf design. I don't know, maybe engineering has any comments on that? Yeah.
Just a follow-up question then. So by the sound of it, it sounds like they're going to require some of the park, some kind of...
Don't know. They may actually have enough room. Just let me, where's my data here? Sorry, I just want to find the slide that has a better site plan. Let me expand that. Oops. I don't know why I can't get it to go larger. Okay, so that helps a little bit. So you can see the property lines here. These are all lot lines within the park, but this outer line here, that would be the boundary of the highway corridor, basically, the right-of-way for the highway. So the line comes in through here and in here as well. So it looks like there is an old driveway, an old road entrance, probably servicing some old properties there in the past. So I don't know, you imagine a cloverleaf there kind of thing. I would expect them to be partway into the park.
All right, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Haynes, Brownell, and then Plant.
The risk of repeating the words that are said, but I think it's important to. This is a heroic plan, it's a fabulous plan. Just the amount of heavy lifting you've done with so many of the stakeholders, it's very, very commendable. Thank you for that. Just a piece of information there, the camping that you saw in the park, was that recreational housing?
The camping?
Yeah.
It was homeless. It was a homeless situation. Yeah, I'm not aware of kind of ongoing, frequent recreational camping. I don't know, maybe Becky, do you have any comments on that?
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make a small comment on the density of the hawthorn there. When I moved here with my 3 boys, we went down there and it was just fantastic. And of course, we're in the woods there. We'd bought tickets to Cineplex to see the 7 o'clock show. We went in at 6:30. We didn't get out till 7:30. We just got so lost in there. It was quite something. Yeah. So I completely understand that part of it. When you talk about that area where there was construction fill,
yes,
and you're going to build some sort of forestry going on there, is there any thought to making that a food forest with nuts or other fruits to make it a sort of...
Well, I think at this point there's nothing terribly predetermined about it. We're just talking about it in conceptual terms, so it could be different things. And that's certainly something, if council desired us to explore that further, we'd certainly be happy to do that.
And is that an area where there might be some community food growing aside from just the trees, maybe? Okay.
Well, it's not a particularly inviting space. I'm sure you know, you go up there, it's brutal. The highway traffic, the sound, the auditory impacts in the park are big. Doesn't mean we can't do some kind of barrier planting in there to help shield folks in there from highway noise, but when you start thinking about the additional infrastructure that a community garden needs, you have to have, you know, potable water, you've got to have parking nearby, and the parking is an issue. That supporting infrastructure was an issue when we looked at the BMX proposal, and this site here was kind of tagged or flagged as a potential location for that. And make no mistake, I think there is a definite need for a BMX or a bike skills park somewhere in Saanich. Certainly our youth are asking for it, but we just don't see this as being the right location for it. But we did look at the supporting infrastructure that we would need for something like a bike skills park, and it would be the same for a community garden. We'd have to have parking nearby, and we just don't know where that would be. I don't think we could assume that the mall would allow us to use their parking for community garden type visitation.
Thank you.
There was, early on, before I got involved, one of the fifth themes that came up was urban agriculture and community gardens. And there was some discussion about a potential for a community garden down in this area, which from a supporting infrastructure standpoint is a good location. We do have driveway access, there is water in there, but it contravenes, well, it's within the riparian area setback, and there are some other environmental problems associated with it, so it was withdrawn fairly early in the process.
Yeah, thank you. So recently I saw a little YouTube video on it's a new pharmaceutical called Nature, and how it can relieve stress and can be associated with side effects of pleasantness and smiles. So this is certainly on that prescription list. Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
Yeah. That was good. You had to go a long way in order to get to that one. That was good. Councillor Bratlaff and then Plan.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is to staff. One of the biggest issues we have, and I love dogs, but one of the biggest issues is the dog do bags. People fill them, and as we see in Mount Doug, when the leaves all fall, it's a new decoration on trees. So my question to you is this. You mentioned that we would have dispensers. I think part of the issue is having enough garbage cans for people to dispose. And some of those issues, because I've seen it on a can or two, says no dog do. So in this particular park, and hopefully in others, what are you going to do differently to help and alleviate these problems?
Well, the plan does foresee some additional garbage cans going in. Let's see if I can show you the graphic here. It doesn't have much. Oh. I can't close. Oh wait a minute, I know what I'll do. Sorry, just bear with me here. So here we are. Ah. So the symbol for garbage cans is this brown, purpley symbol.
I'm glad you can see that here, because we can't.
We are looking at adding another one here, more central in the park.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the area close to that open, informal recreation space. Because you do make a fair point. We have heard from dog owners who say, hey, wait a minute, we get into the middle of the park and that would be a great place to be able to deposit a bag because we don't want to walk around the park carrying bags, so they toss them. Is it the right thing to do? Probably not, but can we understand why they do it? Yeah. One of the operational issues that we get into is the weight of these things. And I don't want to get into technical issues of dog do, but it's heavy. and you get a garbage can full of dog do, and you can't lift it. You have to have a crane. So we do have some style of garbage cans which are below ground. They extend about 4 feet below ground, and staff can haul them out of the ground with a small crane. But it's a truck-mounted crane, so they have to be able to get a small truck beside the can. And here we think it's feasible because we've got a big 3-meter wide trail. Operations staff aren't happy when they have more cans to empty, so it's an ongoing discussion that we've been having with our operations folks.
So I guess further with that, and I won't tell you about a resident who sent me an article in, I think it's Australia, where they actually parks compost the dog do. So process.
Yes, that's.
But, so with your interpretive signs, that might be something that should be part of it, so that dog owners know where the deposit can be.
That kind of thing would definitely go on the orientation signage, on the
Okay.
kiosks here, the big information kiosks that will be installing.
Okay,
And we'll definitely have some nice clear wording around that issue.
yeah, it really is, I've never been, when Mount Doug, when the leaves fall, it's just terrible. This is one of our premium parks, and people walk their dogs and then they toss it. But I've been told it's because we don't have enough garbage cans. And now, as you're saying, it's about the weight, so centralized and some information. I'm glad about the interpretive signage because, yeah, you can get lost in this park. It's a beautiful park. So long overdue to get some interpretive signage. I was also wondering about paddling. And maybe that's part of your education, but also especially low water times like we've had this summer, right? And is there an opportunity to post in those situations? And also talk to those recreational groups that actually use that area for paddling?
There actually has been quite a bit of dialogue between BCKC and GWI and ourselves,
Yeah.
delivering that message. Some of the Canoe and Kayak Club literature actually talks about tours up the Coquitlam River, so in some ways they've been promoting it. So we've been trying to do some education with them to basically back off and please do not be doing that. We have been working with the Fish Fence folks as well, Dorothy in particular, in obtaining some federal signs, kind of raising the profile of the sanctuary, bird sanctuary, and we've also got some signs from Fisheries and Oceans around kind of good stewardship in riparian area. So we'll be installing quite a number of signs along the Colquitt. So we'll probably be criticized for sort of over posting signs along the river, but I think in this case, I think we probably need to err on the side of being a little overhanded rather than underhanded.
I actually think that as well, and there were a few comments about how long this process took, but I want to say I think the process was long enough to get a good project or plan. And I remember some of the comments I was getting via email about some of the concepts proposed for the park. And so when you take a little longer, you talk to bigger stakeholder groups and you end up with a better plan. And I think this is it. And I just want to say I think park master plans are where we have to go with our larger parks, like this park Cutter. And the other thing I would say is that I think some of the lands that you've got in the plan, you've marked it as PCC land, but I thought those were all transferred to Ministry of MOTI. So I don't know if the land name holder is different than PCC now.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
So maybe your maps need to reflect that as opposed to
that
PCC.
happened midstream through the plan, and we just never did get around to updating the plans that were referencing PCC.
Okay, perfect. Because I think maybe there might be some negotiation with the highway improvements that maybe we might be able to negotiate maybe some of those lands, because there's a lot of parcels that they own spread throughout that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the minutes that reference doggy doo-doo. I want to see how staff handle that. Councillor Plant and then Bergman.
Thank you. I think one of the things that everybody acknowledges about Saanich is the wonderful parks, and this has been a nice example for me to see the work that goes into how we ensure that stays that way. And as much as I enjoyed hearing you, I enjoyed more reading through the whole plan because it gave me a chance to actually go into it more in depth. So I have a comment and then two questions. So the comment is you mentioned at one point about the idea to be open to council providing feedback on this fruit tree. I certainly think a fruit forest would be something that I would be in support of in that southeast corner, noise or not. I think there's more examples of fruit forests around the world that there could be used as exemplars for us to consider. So I just offer that as a comment. The question I have is, I'll start with the easy one first. The document references the budget and that this would be a part of the annual budget process. In your mind, to implement this plan, is this looking at new funds or can this be incorporated within the current budget for Parks and Recreation?
The latter. It'll be within current funding.
Love it, that was easy. So the tough question is regarding, and we've heard it whispered a couple of times, or not whispered, but mentioned discreetly, is the homeless.
Yes.
And that's what's, for me, missing in this document, is a reference to that in any significant way. The only thing I see is there's a reference for Colquitts. The kid noticed that there's homeless in there, and a teacher references safety, and I don't know what that means. I assume it means something else, but it might refer to that. So would you please just comment on where that should sit? Should it be in part of this park management plan? Is this a policing issue? Is this a provincial issue? Just any comment, because to me, that is something people talk to me about, is homeless in this park.
Well, it is a complex issue for sure, and it's all of those things that you mentioned. I think it is a provincial issue. It's a municipal issue. It's a social issue, really. We're not faced with the same magnitude of the issue that, say, Victoria is, for example, but this probably is kind of ground central for homeless camping in Saanich. I can't think of any other parks that have this level of camping taking place. Having said that, it's not, it's hard to put into words, but it's not the kind of thing that's occurring all the time, such as in Beacon Hill Park and some of these other smaller parks in Victoria. It is fairly hidden, it is fairly low in volume. Doesn't minimize the problem faced by some of these individuals by any means. We have handled it in the past as a policing issue. When complaints do come in, the police do respond, parks crews go in and they clean up the camps. There are some illegal activities going on in the park associated with camps. There's some drug use, there's stripping of bicycle parts, that kind of thing going on. I wish I had an easy answer for you, but